of the Drainage Act as prescribed in this report. On the item? Carried. Item number 3, we have speakers, so we're going to hold that. That's the Fluellen Municipal Drain. Item number 4 is the Dowdle Municipal Drain. Amendment to the engineer's report. That the Agricultural Affairs Committee recommends that Council adopt the engineer's report prepared by Robinson Consultants entitled Amendment to the Engineer's Report for the Dowdle Municipal Drain Branch Number 6 DND property dated August 2015 and give first and second reading to the bylaw attached as document 2 of this report in accordance with sections 42 and 45 of the Drainage Act of Ontario. On the item? Carried? Item number 5 is the City of Ottawa Rideau Valley Conservation Authority Septic System Service Agreement. So the last time that we extended this was 2011. So it's that the Agricultural Affairs Committee recommend Council approve 1, the renewal of the Septic System Service Agreement between the City of Ottawa and the Rideau Valley Conservation Authority effective January 1st, 2016 to December 31st, 2021 in the form attached as document 1, and 2, the delegation of authority to the General Manager, Planning and Growth Management Department to execute the agreement in the form attached as document 1, and any required renewals or extensions of the contract between the City of Ottawa and the Rideau Valley Conservation Authority for enforcement of Part 8 of Ontario Building Code. So this is essentially the Ottawa Septic System Office that runs out of the Rideau Valley Conservation Authority. They take care of our septic inspections on the behalf of the City of Ottawa. So on the renewal of that agreement, carried. Item number 6, that's the land evaluation area review updates and the Barnsdale Ontario Municipal Board decision. So we're going to have a presentation on that. The location says West Carleton March, but that's wrong. Item number 7, development charges for 1229 Dwyer Hill Road. That Agricultural Rural Affairs Committee recommend that Council approve the development charges to be imposed in respect of 1229 Dwyer Hill Road as set out in this report. On the item? Carried. Thank you very much. Item number 8, protocol for wildlife protection during construction. We have a speaker on that item, so we'll hold that item. And item number 9, Mantic area specific development charges. Perfect. So that item is that the Agricultural Affairs Committee recommend to Planning Committee that Council endorse the bylaw 2014-229 be revised such that the applicability of the area-specific development charge for water and sanitary sewer services be in respect of the revised Schedule I guess. Is it 1 or I? Is it I? Perfect. I'm not stupid. Attached as document 1. This is an item that goes back to last year when the city developed the area-specific charges. Committee dealt with this in earlier this year to direct staff to go back and look at it as how it can be assessed properly and essentially not charge people for services they don't get. And this is the result of that. So on that item, carried. Thank you very much to staff for your work on that. I appreciate it very much. All right, so we're going to go back to that's it for the regular agenda. So I'm going to go back to item number 3, which is the Fluellen Municipal Drain amendment to the engineer's report. So just to give some context, the Fluellen Municipal Drain runs north and south of Fernbank Road, and the intent of the report is to develop a drainage outlet for the properties that are being developed north of Fernbank Road, and that drain, the outlet then goes through the properties to the south. So I know we have 2 speakers on the matter. Lisa De La Rosa on behalf of Cardell Homes. Thanks, Lisa. So you have 5 minutes.
Yeah, no problem. I'm actually here on behalf of a numbered company. Yeah, no, it's not a problem. So we are a 50% owner in that parcel of land, and as of, I guess, last Tuesday, we received the notice or the actual report. Having read through it, it's been about a quick week of learning the Drainage Act and learning all about engineering, and having some of our consultants and lawyer review everything. And my indication and everything is saying that, yes, we did probably get notice of this in August of 2011, such as indicated in the report. However, personnel-wise, we were in the middle of, I was starting, someone was leaving. So the meeting on site, there was no representation from the 215 company. We are aware that the master servicing plan and the CDP for the Fernbank lands north does indicate that modifications to the drain could be done to sort of help development, lower cost or such for lands north of the Fernbank Road. It was sort of interesting to see what was being proposed. The implications for us right now, we are a rural piece of land. However, being as close as we are on two bordered sides of the urban boundary plus the Lear review that's ongoing, the potential is that this piece of land could form part of the urban boundary down the road. Down the road, who knows, question marks, we understand. What's happening now is that this drain, as we understand, the work that would be done wouldn't increase the amount of water going in it. It just essentially, it's going to be deeper and potentially have more water more of the time, like the same amount of water but more of the time, so not necessarily intermittent. And our concern is, yes, what environmental issues could be raised down the road if this drain is enhanced? Right now, I'm not aware whether it's fish habitat or not, but those sorts of things are high on our radar down the road. It's not just a matter of the width of the drain. It could be then the setbacks to that. So we're just wondering if there is alternatives to doing the drain work this way. What are they and why have they been discounted? Or what other options are available? And that our main request here today is to see whether or not there is additional time for us to get our engineers to review or look at the implications, or maybe and maybe sit down with the landowners to the north and potentially come up with some sort of agreement that we can sort of all agree on. But at this point in time, we're not comfortable with this pushing forward the way it is.
All right, thank you very much, Lisa. So I'll just, I know we have another speaker, but I'll just quickly just ask Mr. Robinson or Mr. Ryan to comment. So David Ryan, of course, is our drainage superintendent. Mr. Robinson, Andy Robinson, is with Robinson Consultants, who was the engineer of record for this. I'll just ask you to comment on some of the comments that we just heard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So Council appointed Andy Robinson in 2011, and notices were sent out as required under the Drainage Act for an on-site meeting. Unfortunately, Cardale didn't show up at the meeting, and in the 5 years since then, they haven't spoken to the drainage engineer directly to put forward any other options and so on. So it's unfortunate that discussion didn't take place because they've had 5 years to kind of work this out. That being said, though, from the technical aspects, I will ask Andy Robinson to speak to that. He has a presentation if you'd like to see it.
Okay, we're on here, are we? Yes, we were appointed, as Dave said, in 2011. But the background on this, there was a stormwater management strategy for the Fernbank community, which was done in 2009, which outlined basically the plan and the portion of the plan that presently drains to this outlet to continue to drain to it, and the suggestion that it would have to be deepened and improved in order for that to occur. So just kind of to set the pace, this has been around for a long time. The planning portion has gone through all of the public input and opportunities at the time it was done. We had nothing to do with that, so I can't speak to the details of it. But our role really was to amend the existing engineer's report to accommodate these changes, which is what we have done. Now, we did, in the process, query the engineer working for the CRT lands north of Fernbank Road about the concept of a pipe, and they've responded, and I think reasonably, that they thought that would not be the best way to do it, because if they put a pipe in now, it would accommodate what they're doing. There's other issues with enclosing a drain, which providing flows for the 100-year or the 50-year flows as well, so there would still be additional requirements. But our thrust at the time was to try to sort of precipitate some discussion between the CRT landowners and the landowners immediately south of Fernbank Road. And I don't know what happened on that. But just so we've proceeded to do this, we're not advocating it from the point of view if we were doing a municipal drain from scratch, which had nothing to develop, then we come up with designs. We've checked the designs, we've checked the flows, we've asked for some increases in culvert sizing and to extend the actual work so it goes through Mr. Llewellyn's land as well, further down. So at this stage, I guess the other part is that I'm not sure if you delayed this or if you referred it back to us, you'd have to do it with some specific instructions because we have no other mechanism excuse me, to do this. But from a timing point of view, there is the mechanisms. I mean, there's a quarter revision which deals with assessments only. But if a landowner is not happy with the technical part, or after the quarter revision not happy with the decisions, or if they're not happy with the allowances that have been made, there is an option of appealing to the tribunal. Now, the tribunal date is normally, or a landowner can put a request in for a tribunal hearing or an objection to the tribunal up to 40 days after the notice has been mailed out for the quarter revision. So this kind of goes to council and gets first reading, then a date is set generally within 30 days of then for the quarter revision, so that once that notice is sent out, the owners still have 40 days. So I guess all I'm saying is there's quite a bit of time for them to look at things, and if they decide they really need to appeal it to get a change, they have that option of doing it through the tribunal. I'm not sure right now, I will say, unless some instructions came back from council specifically instructing us to put a pipe in, that we have any mechanism to change that. So I think there's still benefit. I understand the timing from the landowners of getting this, but there is likely at least another 50 days or 60 days before they have to make a decision if they cannot come to some agreements amongst themselves.
Thanks for that, Andy. I know, like personally, I don't think I'd be comfortable with referring it back to you to look at a pipe, just because of knowing that. I mean, you look at item number 4 on our agenda today, which was another drain that an engineer's report, an amendment to the engineer's report was put on to actually put in a pipe. Knowing that avenue is available down the road, and the fact that this land is designated and zoned as agricultural land, I wouldn't want to do something that presupposes that this land would be used for anything but agricultural uses. So it's a bit of a catch-22, because I understand the situation that you find yourself in, Lisa, with the property south of Fernbank. But ultimately, in my mind, all that land is agricultural land, and we deal with this all the time. I mean, the Monaghan drain is a perfect example, just down the road, where lands north of Hopeside Road, north of Fernbank, were needed, better drainage. An amendment is made to the engineer's report to make modifications to the drain. A lot of the work is done south of Hopeside Road, which is an open ditch through farmland. So it's a very similar situation. Now, if something were to happen in the future where amendments would want to be made to that drain, that avenue is fully available for you. And the reality is, if the land was there to be developed, you'd have to go through it anyways. It's because you are making changes to that watershed if the land was developed. So ultimately, instead of going through the process twice, you can just kind of kill two birds with one stone if that ever came to be where that land was to be developed. So knowing that the opportunity is there, it's hard for me to suggest going back and revisiting it now, because there is those avenues. Plus, worst case scenario, you can always appeal to the tribunal, but you would have to bring forward, I think, as Andy said, some sort of alternative to what we're talking about here. So, do we have any questions for Andy on this? I know that we have another speaker, so I want to get to the other speaker before anything else. So, Lisa, thank you. Just going to ask our second speaker to come up. Ted Phillips. Mr. Phillips, welcome. You have 5 minutes.
I don't know if I have a mic.
You're good. You're good.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Taggart has an interest in the lands that drain into this piece of property. We're partners with 2 other developers, Jim Burgout from Claridge, who is here as well. I find it ironic that the previous speaker indicates that she got some notice 5 days ago. Well over a year ago, representatives of our companies met with Cardell, tried to secure an arrangement with them to, in fact, do this work. They refused to accept the work that was proposed to be done on their property, indicating that this was urban land and that they wanted us to pay them about $300,000 an acre because it was urban land, which we felt was a little bit ridiculous. So, notwithstanding the fact that we couldn't come to an arrangement with them, I reached out at least a half a dozen times to Greg Graham, the president of Cardell in Ottawa. He refused to return my phone calls. I called Ryan Oakey, the owner of Cardell in Calgary. We had a lengthy conversation. He assured me that Greg would get back to me. I never did hear back from Greg. So to suggest that we haven't tried to sit down and work out other arrangements, in my opinion, is not correct. And we would support committees approving the staff report as written.
All right. Thank you very much. Do we have any questions for Mr. Phillips? No. Any further questions for Andy or Dave? No. All right. So I mean, obviously, I said in my comments a couple minutes ago. I think it's makes sense to go forward with the engineer's report as it's written here, knowing that there is avenues later on should those opportunities need to arise. So. On the item that the Agricultural Affairs Committee recommend that Council adopt the engineer's report prepared by Robinson Consultants, entitled Amendment to the Engineer's Report for the Fluellen Municipal Drain Branch 1, dated August 2015, and give first and second reading to the bylaw attached as Document 2 in this report, in accordance with Sections 42 and 45 of the Drainage Act of Ontario. On the item? Carried? Thanks. Thanks, Andy. Thanks, Dave. So our next item is a presentation and update on the land evaluation and area review, in which we'll also touch on the recent rezoning of the Barnsdale lands through the wonderful auspices of the Ontario Municipal Board. So we have Marika Clark and Bruce Finley here to provide our presentation on the LEAR.
There we go. It's cordless too, which is good. This is not intended to be a slideshow presentation. I have a number of slides which have maps and things on them, which I'll talk to briefly. But I have provided a number of maps on the slideshow presentation, and I'm going to talk to the report or the information report that I provided to the committee. There's 2 topics in this presentation. Okay, is that better? Okay. Okay. We've got 2 topics basically. One is the Barnsdale Road hearing, and I'll talk to that. And the second part of this is, and it's a related matter, is the update of the city's LEAR, which is the methodology we use to determine the prime agricultural lands in the city of Ottawa. The Barnsdale application was a private application by landowners along Barnsdale Road, just south of the community of Barhaven. The land was designated agricultural resource area back in 1997 with the former region official plan. The application applied to redesignate this land to general rural area. It was supported by an assessment, an agricultural assessment that looked at the soil capability. It did an evaluation based on the city's LEAR model, which is a model that looks at the soil capability for agriculture and also looks at the implications or the location of the land in relation to conflicting land uses. So it comes up with a scoring system that determines whether or not it should be protected for agricultural purposes or not. Under that system and the analysis done by their consultant, the land did not meet that minimum requirement for agricultural protection. The city rejected the application on the basis that, well, two bases primarily. One is that the city was undertaking its LEAR review and that this sort of change to the agricultural resource area should be done comprehensively, not individually. And secondly, because it's inconsistent with the provincial policy statement, which states that land should not be removed from an agricultural resource area unless it's to be used for urban purposes. In this particular case, the intent was to simply change the designation to general rural. At the board hearing, we provided evidence to the board that we considered this to be a step to making this land urban in the future, because under the provisions of our official plan, land that is agricultural resource area is not considered for urban expansion, at least in the first round of review of potential candidates for expansion. The board rejected the city's argument. It found that the time frame that we had suggested for doing the LEAR review or completing the LEAR review was too long, and the client had already, or the applicant had already provided information concerning the capability of the land. The board didn't directly address the provincial policy statement matter, but considered that this was a boundary condition and that in the board's opinion Barnsdale Road constituted a reasonable boundary for the agricultural resource area, and that the general rural designation acted as a buffer between the agricultural resource area and the urban boundary, notwithstanding that sometime in the future this would potentially be urban. So the board found, or did not agree with the city's position, and subsequently has ordered that the designation be amended, and staff is preparing that amendment to go back to the board. You can see in 1997, this is a copy of the LEAR map that was done back in the 90s. At that time, the urban boundary was further from this land. The white area to the north is what was urban at that time. And you can see that the capability of the land holdings at that time did meet the minimum scoring. But when you look at the fragmentation that's occurred as a result of the new urban boundary, this is what it looks like today. You can see the hatched area is actually an expansion area that Council agreed to in 2009. That will eventually become part of the Barhaven community. So you can see it fragments that original agricultural area up into a number of small parcels. And individually, these small parcels do not rate as well under the city's LEAR system. So this is basically moving from the Barnsdale to LEAR. On the left, we have a breakdown of what the LEAR means, and as I pointed out before, the LE component looks at the site based on its capability for agriculture and ranks the soil types, classes 1 through 7. The area review looks at things like lot size, conflicted land uses, proximity to uses that would cause a conflict with agriculture in the future. It also looks at current and past agricultural use and things like that. So the Lear model needs to be updated. The Lear model we have at the moment is outdated, only slightly outdated. Most of the criteria that we use are still used in the current Lear model that's recommended by the province, except for one. And the one characteristic that will probably change in the new Lear is that land adjacent to a village or an urban area under the current Lear is actually devalued. So the agricultural capability score goes down if it's next to the urban boundary or a village. Under the new Lear model, that doesn't work that way. It doesn't lose any points for being next to the urban boundary. We started Lear in 2010 review. We had a Lear committee established. We looked at soils data, which we received at the beginning of 2010. We postponed the work being done on the Lear update in 2012 primarily because of concerns we had with the soil capability mapping. And I'm going to explain what those concerns are in a minute. We also started in 2014 in an effort to try and work out these problems and possibly even get new soil mapping done for the city with a pilot exercise looking at soils basically in the west of the city in 2 9-kilometre square areas. That work is ongoing. The province is continuing to do that work through this year. And because there was this direction to look at a solution that gets us to 2017 completion, we started to look at, is there some way we can use existing soils data? And that's what we're working on at the present time. And I've outlined in the report a process to get us to an update of Lear mapping and a recommendation on agricultural lands, possibly by the mid 2017. Just in 2017. So just as an example of what we found with the most recent mapping, this is the 1997 soil capability mapping that we have. This is Osgood, and you're looking at basically the southeast of the city of Ottawa at this point. You can see the colouring of the soils. Each of these shapes is basically a soil group, and the colouring ranks the soil in terms of its capability for agriculture. If you look at the colouring down in the bottom right-hand corner there, and then compare it to the information we got in 2009. You can see the colours have changed. I'll just jump back, if I can jump back. Okay, so the darker brown, there's three high class. The class 1, 2, and 3 goes from dark brown. There's very little dark brown, as you can see on the map, because there's very little class 1 soil in Ottawa. And then there's this class 2 is the mid brown, and then the class 3 is the light brown. Now jump back to the new information. You can still see there's the dark brown. There's a bit up at the intersection just in the southeast corner of Mitch Owens and Bank. But if you look at the land to the east, you'll see that there's a lot more class 2, and the class 3 is a lot less, and it's down in the bottom end. We'll go back. You can see that the class 2 in this case is in the bottom end, and the class 3 is in the middle. And there's a lot less of the class 3 in that particular case. So this is one area, and that's probably not a big issue because they're both prime lands, and they would come up as an agricultural resource area with some adjustments around the boundary. But let's look at the area between Stittsville, and Manotick. And if I can get the pointer up, this area in here. All right, so if we switch over to the 2010 information, sorry, wrong one. Over in this area, we have a lot, sorry, this area in here, we have a lot more Class 2, and we have a lot of land that was Class 4 in 1997 is now Class 3. So there's a lot of land between Manotick and Stittsville, Greeley, sorry, that is now prime land. So we're probably, if this is correct information, and this is what we have to actually confirm, if this is correct information, we've been allowing country lot subdivisions on prime agricultural land. So that's what we want to try and work out. So at the present time, we have two pieces of data. We have 97 and we have 2009 information. And we can't get from the province what happened between these two. They don't have an explanation for why these changes were made. So that's what we're trying to figure out. So one of the possibilities is if we go with the existing data, maybe these are the areas where we do some additional soil sampling to confirm what really happened here. Because going forward, we're going to have, if we move forward with this information, which is supposed to be the one that's been recommended by the province, we're going to have a lot of angry landowners. Anyway, that's it, so I'm ready for any questions.
Thank you for that, Bruce. We just have a delegation on the matter first, so we'll go to that, and then any questions. So Klaus Beltzner, President of the Manotick Village and Community Association. It's on. You could see it. 5 minutes.
Just couldn't see it. Thank you, Chair Moffat. I'm glad you left that particular mapping up. I'm the president of the Manotick Village and Community Association, and when I saw this particular report, I started getting really worried. Worried for our village, our rural village of Manotick. And I'm typically a suspender and belt type of guy. I don't want my pants to fall down. So what I'm looking at for the village of Manotick, to retain its rural character, I would like to have more than just the assurance of the value of the farmland between the urban boundary and the village boundary, to be the protector of the rural character of Manotick. I would like to see something additional. I would like to see a policy from the city that ensures the rural character of the village of Manotick, to have a farm buffer. Right now we have a buffer of 1 kilometer for expansion of the village boundary. I'm asking for a 2-kilometer buffer for farmland to retain the character of the village of Manotick. When I look at this map, I see also north of the village of Manotick the quality of the soils being less than they were in the earlier diagram, the 1997 or whatever it was. I see changes, and that worries me. It worries me in terms of the ability of developers to cut and slice and dice to get closer to Manotick and then to consume Manotick within the urban boundary. So I would ask consideration from this committee for a farm buffer between the urban boundary and the village of Manotick. Thank you.
Thank you. I know you've made that submission into as part of our Manotick secondary plan as well, and I don't think staff have formulated a response as of yet, but I know that they will as part of that secondary plan review. But I appreciate your comments. I know that the land north of Manotick is designated as Class 2 agricultural land, and there is some discrepancy maybe in these maps, but that's why staff are doing the work they're doing on the Lear and spending the extra time to make sure that we get these numbers shored up, because everything we've seen so far shows that land, similar to the land south of Hope Side Road, are Class 2 agricultural land. So any sort of suggestion that it's not, I think, requires extra work to confirm that it really is, so that we don't have these situations in the future. But certainly if someone came forward and tried to do what they did north of Barnsdale, south of Barnsdale, they wouldn't get the same results, because those lands are quite different. Do we have any questions for Mr. Belts? Yeah? Go ahead. No? Okay, so, all right. So thank you, Clevis. So, comments for staff? Councillor Blade?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I guess I'm struggling to understand why this is taking so long. Right? So shortly after we were elected in 2010, went on this committee, we met a number of times, and obviously there's been no conclusion. We've now lost an OMB appeal as a result of it. I have two developers who've already told me they're going to apply for redesignations in my end on similar type lands, similar circumstances, adjacent to existing subdivisions, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I have no confidence that we'll be able to defend those given this decision. So why is it taking so long?
Well, we require the information to be able to do the assessment of the LEAR, to develop the LEAR. Developing the model is not a big issue, but as part of that development, each time we did an iteration and tested the model, we tested it with information that includes soil data. The model itself, like I said, the only real variable that is definitely going to change through the update of LEAR is going to be how land is ranked adjacent to an urban or village boundary. There are the guidelines provided by the province give us a fair range of criteria that we can use to develop the LEAR model, but the work that was done between 2010 and 2012 basically has a model very similar to what we have now. So it's not the model that's the big issue. It's what do you put into the model to get you the results that you need to determine the agricultural land. The 2009 information, because we have only two pieces of data. We have a paper map that shows us what we had in 1997, and we have the digital data that we have now, which I've shown you. And we don't know why there's such significant changes.
Why does that matter? 2009 is more recent than 1997, so why?
It's all based on the same soil mapping. So the changes that occurred in 2009, somebody sat down at some point and said, we don't think that soil capability is correct. It may well be correct. This may well be correct information, but we've got no documentation saying why the change, and the ministry is not able to give us that documentation. We can proceed on this basis, but as I just pointed out, we're going to have a bun fight.
We're going to have a what, sir?
A bun fight, because we're going to be identifying some significant new areas of agricultural land. And if we go into that and do that, we want to know that we can justify the soil mapping that we're using.
And so, this data comes from where?
This data comes from the province of Ontario.
So we're not satisfied that data from the Government of Ontario is sufficient to defend the Government of Ontario's policies and our policies relating to development?
Well, the stuff we had in 97 was from the Government of Ontario as well.
Yeah, but 2009 is 12 years more recent than 97. So,
but it's not new soil information. It is capability information. Somebody has made a decision through that process, and it's not documented. And even the people at AMAFRA cannot give us this information. So that's what concerns us. And we're trying to get to a point where we can defend whatever recommendations we make in terms of agricultural land. Now, we have we have soil experts out doing sampling this year. AMAFRA's got a team out doing some work. And what we're suggesting through this process is that we have an opportunity maybe to test this area and confirm whether or not this information is correct. Now, this is just a significant area. There are changes elsewhere in the city as well.
Sure.
And that means that at some point we're going to have to open this up for more detailed site analysis.
Well, but I get this is the point I'm getting at, right? In the environment where we are today, we can't defend our current status because we haven't done a LEAR, and we just lost a case, and the companies that are next are going to be going through what happened at that OMB decision, and they're going to use it against us at the fringes of Orleans and probably the fringes of Canada and maybe even more fringes here in Barrhaven. The longer we delay, the more we open ourselves up to boundary expansions that we don't want or aren't being planned for necessarily in a balanced way. So I appreciate your concerns about the risk in just using this data, but there's, I think, a bigger risk on the other side. I don't get why we're going to take an additional 2.5 years to do this, or 2 years to do this. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
All right, Councillor Drews.
Thank you very much for the presentation, and I wasn't here before, but this is really troubling information, and I remember we spoke about the LEAR before, but let me ask you a question. Isn't it the LEAR study that we done in 1997 and basically we updated in 1999? These are the mechanisms we govern our rural land with.
What the LEAR does is enables us to identify what the province calls the prime agricultural area. The PPS identifies two elements. One is prime land. Prime land is class 1, 2, or 3 land. Prime agricultural areas are primarily classes 1, 2, and 3 land, but it can include lower quality land. What LEAR does is gives us a mechanism to determine what those areas should be.
Perfect. I'm glad to hear that. So with the city of Ottawa, we have tons of policies around, and we do lots of policy and planning. How come we don't have a mechanism on every development, on every time we have an application, to review and look at these LEARs on a one-on-one basis? If our mapping doesn't match the province, and you don't know what happened between us and the province, why we don't have our policies when we have a development coming to the rural area, to making sure we do our own study and we assign engineer firm or company to making sure that the land are protected? Because we really, this open up on us lots of area, like not just in my ward, on my colleagues, and we're not really protecting our rural agricultural lands. And this study, it took us 4 years behind, and I don't know where it left and what went on. This is, to us, is very important, and we need to make sure that moving forward we could win the stuff at OMB, because if OMB right now said this is how it's going to move forward, we're going to have all the developers coming all over us, and that's going to create more issues to communities and in our rural areas. So I'm not sure what we're trying to do here, but this is really troubling information, and I really like to have, if we can put some policies, our mechanism right away, so we can tie up these developments for coming forward.
Well, the designation is already identified in our official plan, and the approach we took at the board hearing was that this is the prime agricultural area. It's the area that's been identified previously by the city through a legitimate LEAR evaluation. It protects the agricultural resource area in accordance with the provincial policy statement, and it was our position at the board that that decision should not have been made to remove that land. If we open it up to a system where every single application that comes in gets to do a LEAR assessment and determine that that particular site is not doesn't meet the criteria of prime land, then you get an erosion of your agricultural resource area. The intent, the provincial policy intent, is that once identified, you don't adjust these areas other than through a comprehensive review. And that's the piece that we were trying to do originally for the 2013 official plan review, is to update that real model. What we found, though, is our whole concept of what is the prime agricultural land in the city may have shifted, and we don't know why it's shifted. I'd rather, the approach of staff is that you do the LEAR, you do it in a comprehensive manner, and you determine what's your agricultural resource area, and then you put your resources behind protecting it.
Do we have any legislation in hand now to protect our agricultural land, like in place? Because now we open up, so that probably Tim.
Mr. Chair, I think it would be a mistake to conclude that the agricultural land within the city is not protected. It's with regret that we were unsuccessful in this case, but I think it's important to note that in this case there were, I would phrase, legitimate concerns with respect to the soil capability of the land in question. And indeed, we did not lead evidence to challenge the soil capability mapping that their expert had done, but rather our concerns were process related. We thought it should be done comprehensively. And in that regard, we were unsuccessful because the board was concerned with the length of time it had taken. But with respect to the vast swaths of the agricultural land within the city of Ottawa, my sense of the situation is that if someone went and did an individual site assessment, the evaluation that would come out of there is more than likely to be in accordance with what the city has within its official plan through the layer analysis right now. So I don't think that vast swaths of land are at risk, but there are going to be parcels in some locations where people are going to be able to rely on this decision, and there is a need for the city to move forward with being able to validate soil capabilities, but for that we have to rely on what the province has provided us with.
And so, just to be clear on that, then, just because somebody owns Class 2 or 3 agricultural land up against the urban boundary doesn't mean they can go use the Barnsdale decision, which is Class 5 or 6 agricultural lands, as a way to rezone those lands.
That is correct, Mr. Chair.
It'd be only, if it's a precedent, it's only like for like.
That is correct, Mr. Chair.
And there are locations in the city that are like for like, but they just don't happen to be in the same area, for the most part.
I'm not certain what your last question is asking, Mr. Chair.
Oh, it's okay. It's more of a statement. It's all good. All right, thank you, Mr. Mark. Thank you, Councillor Drews. Councillor Hughley? And then, just after Councillor Hughley, I know we have another speaker that signed up, so after.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I understand you correctly. You're saying that they took the same data. They did not use any new technologies or any new method of evaluation, but came up with a different outcome.
That's not quite what I'm saying. They obviously did have a method of evaluation because they produced a different map. What we don't know is what that was.
So they never gave any justification.
They are not able to tell us how this happened. The people that did that work no longer work for the ministry. This unit in MAFRA has diminished and diminished and diminished to the point where there's very few people. In fact, I think this month one of their two podologists has retired. So, and this is becoming an issue for the province because with the Green Energy Act and the number of people who are looking and investing in solar panels, they're looking at soil capability because they want to locate these energy projects on agricultural, not on prime agricultural land. So they're looking very seriously at Canada land inventory mapping from the province. And they're having problems all over the province with these issues about people doing analyses and finding that land that was in an agricultural resource area, according to their mapping, is not coming up.
Okay,
Not
so we
coming
have a
up.
study, and you're suggesting we need to find out how it changed. But even if we find out why or how it changed, there's no way to appeal the OMB ruling or anything. So really what we have to do is try and work with
I
what
don't think personally, from what I've seen of Lear, from what I've seen of 97 Lear, I don't disagree with the capability of the land in the Barnsdale Strip. It is fragmented. A lot of it has been used. There's been sand removed from that site, and the farming along that strip it's still farmed, but it's not the same as it was when we did the review in 97. But where am I going with this? I think the decision of the board is more related to the time taken to do the review, and not so much the...
Okay, so it comes down to how do we do this review quicker? And you're
That's
saying
what I'm trying to do.
2017 is the quickest that you're working on.
Let me go into that slightly more detail. If you look at what I've suggested in the report is that by the first, I think it's the first or second quarter of 2016, we should be able to have a model to use for Lear. Because we've done a lot of the work, we're going to have to reinitiate the steering committee or the working group, and we go back through and we'll get a recommended Lear model to council early 2016.
Is it
And
possible, some have suggested that maybe a way we could fast track this would be to set the criteria for the testing, but allow the property owners themselves to undertake the testing so that we could get it done a whole lot quicker. Does that make sense to you?
Well, if you look at my report, I'm suggesting something like that, but it's not as open to everybody necessarily.
But it would help get to the end quicker if you could get a whole lot of property owners involved. Even if they all don't get involved, you would have a much better picture of all the land that we need to test if we could get multiple people testing at the same time. How fast can you come up with that criteria, or do we already have it?
I'm suggesting by mid-2017.
Okay, now I see Mr. Mark here, so let's listen to his wise counsel for a minute.
Mr. Chair, I try to be a optimistic person, and I am by nature, but skepticism does come into my mind from time to time. And so the risk in inviting landowners to do the testing is that the only landowners that will come forward with the testing are those who are seeking to get their land out of the agricultural resource designation. I think it's highly unlikely that someone who had general rural land and thinks maybe it's a little bit, it could be classified as agricultural resource, it's very unlikely that that person is going to come forward.
And so for that person, we would have to go in and test as we're doing today. Is that what you're telling me?
Yes, but we might not know where those parcels are, Mr. Chair.
Sorry. Did you want to-
So I was just saying they also, in all likelihood, wouldn't let us on their land.
There's another element I'd
But they're not going to let us on their land today if we continue the way we're going. So why wouldn't we want to reach out and try and get as much data as we can to try to figure out whatever is causing this change? That's what I'm not getting. Why is that such a tough question? Why wouldn't we want to do it?
We are doing that now. Like I said, we did some testing in 2014. The ministry has a team doing some testing this year east of the Rideau. What I've suggested in the report is that we develop the Lear model and get some certainty in terms of what our model is going to be moving forward. Soils aside, but let's not get to the soils just yet. Get the model developed, run the model, even if we use the 2009, 2010 data, run the model with that data, get a Lear map, which is all right, these are the properties that score high in terms of their soil capability, and circulate that and consult on that with the public. That's when we're going to hear people scream about their land potentially becoming agricultural resource areas. Give them the opportunity at that point to come in and say, all right, we want to check the soil on our land, but we've got to have a standard way of doing it. We don't want everybody going out and doing it with a whole lot of different consultants doing the soil mapping in a different format. And we want to be able to use...
Do we not have that now?
Huh?
Do we not have some kind of standard means by now? Like if this has been kicking around this long?
Yes and no. But what we're suggesting is that the guys that have been doing work for us in 2014 and they're still out there now have developed a standardized testing model which includes the way the data is stored, the data is collected, and the data is analyzed. And what we'd like to do is to say, all right, what we will do is we will accept appraisals of individual sites, preferably large areas rather than individual lots, because some lots are going to be very small. But all the data has to be in this format and provided to us so that it's usable by the city and the province to actually update the mapping. Not just simply coming in and saying, well, we dug a hole, we only take class 2 or class 3 or class 4 soils. But we actually have the data in a format that we can put into the database that forms part of the COI mapping and is approved by the province as well, or agreed to by the province. And then they can use it for any additional work that they do here in the City of Ottawa. The second thing that would be important on that would be that as part of that understanding is that if necessary, if there's a huge conflict between what the information is that we receive from the landowner and what we've got or could reasonably expect, then we want to be able to get access to the site to check that sampling, which is something we don't have now. Now, the other component of this and what takes the time is there aren't that many people left in Ontario that can do this sampling. I know that Colville Consulting's been doing a lot of work in Ottawa, but I don't know that there's too many other people around the province at the moment who can do this work. So he's going to be very busy and a very rich man very quick. Or
so then, sorry to interject, but I'm just trying to piece this all together in a way we can understand it. So if there's only really one person or one company left doing the testing, it doesn't help if we get a whole bunch of other people to go out and do the testing. Excuse me. So it doesn't help if we actually open this up then to landowners to do their testing based on our standards.
Well, that's part of that's one of the reasons why if we develop the model and then have this period of time when people have an opportunity to provide input, we're going to have to allow enough time for people to actually get the sampling done on their site. I know there's a number of landowners who've already had this work done, but there'll be a lot of people who haven't had this work.
And in the meantime, the OMB will keep doing their thing and reclassifying the land based on the various applications that are going to come in. So why, my last question, Mr. Chair, is going to be, why aren't we taking a risk management approach to this and saying, okay, these are the lands that are highest at risk, that's all we're going to focus on. You said earlier that you don't disagree with Barnsdale, so why are we wasting any time on that at all? Why don't we just identify the highest risk area that we think we might be able to build a case and get in there and get it done in 6 months, 12 months? Why are we saying 2017?
That's for the data. Then you've got, if it's 2017 for the agricultural resource area designation.
Okay.
The LEAR comes way before that.
So we can get it done quickly.
Yeah. But not the agricultural resource area designation. That goes through an official thing.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you, Councillor. I'm just going to invite Ted Phillips back to the table. He's signed up as a speaker on this. Ted was a member of our working group on the LEAR in the last term of council. Mr. Phillips, welcome back.
roughly to Councillor Blais and staff through, I thought, a very thorough process. I still have never been told what it is that was wrong with the data from OMAFRA. Every other municipality in the province of Ontario uses the OMAFRA data. And in fact, I've got correspondence from OMAFRA themselves saying they've never been told what's wrong with the data either. So I'm perplexed by all of a sudden, at the end of almost 2 years of working with staff, what is wrong with the data. Still haven't had an answer. Like the gentleman from Manotick, I too think that there are significant amounts of lands that need to be protected around the boundary of the City of Ottawa. Perhaps for slightly different reasons. He wants to keep the village the way it is. I actually care about the food for my kids. And there is a significant amount of purchasing of land that's going on outside the boundary that is prime agricultural land that needs to be protected. And so as a person in that Lear working group who spent 2 years of my time, it's disappointing to find out all of a sudden, without any notice, that a committee is cancelled. Having said that, we have subsequently appealed the official Plan 150. One of the reasons why we have appealed that is because the city took out the criteria, unless I stand to be corrected, Mr. Mark might correct me, took out the criteria to screen out agricultural land in an evaluation of looking at what could be urban. So again, from my perspective of somebody who has recommended to our principals not to buy agricultural land, run the risk of being uncompetitive with other developers because, in my opinion, the city has weakened its position both by delaying this Lear work and secondly by taking out parts of the official plan that protected agricultural land.
I know you still don't have a mic, Mr. Mark, but can you comment? I was unaware that there was any changes to the fact that when we look at an urban boundary expansion, of course, we didn't look at one in 2013, but when we do, that we automatically put agricultural land at the bottom of the list.
Mr. Chair, what was done, so just going back to the history a little bit, is that in 07, 08, 09, criteria were developed for the evaluation of land, determine whether or not it would be brought in the urban boundary, and at that time it was only residential land that was identified as being needed. And so the city utilized that criteria. It was a policy analysis, but staff had never brought it into the official plan. It was used as a working document. The board, in its decision on OPA 76, required that it be inserted into the official plan, but that was never the city's position that it should be. And it became Annex 15, just to put a title to it. Mr. Phillips is correct. One of the items of Annex 15 is an automatic screening out of agricultural resource land. One does not even look at it. But Annex 15 covers a whole lot of other criteria also. There's 16 or 17 criteria in total in Annex 15. And so moving forward to whenever there is a need to add land to the urban area, whether it be for residential or non-residential purposes, it was the position of staff, as endorsed by council, that Annex 15 is not necessarily what should be utilized the next time. There should be an opportunity to write a new set of criteria based upon the review that's done at the time. And therefore, yes, it is the city's position that Annex 15 should be removed from the official plan. And in doing so, that did also remove the one criterion that spoke to the automatic exclusion of agricultural land.
But your point is that should we end it, so next time we go through an official plan, whether it's 2018, 2019, or 2023, to look at urban boundary expansion, that we would, as council, would set criteria prior to that review as to how we look at lands.
That is correct, Mr. Chair.
Thanks.
Two
So
points.
I just said that. So I got to follow the rules, Ted. And I can't go back to you. But
I actually wasn't finished before, but that's fine.
Oh, I'm sorry. Were you not finished? I did that. Okay, fair enough. My mistake. I know Councilor Blais has something, but I'll let you finish, Ted.
So the final part of what I was going to say was, with respect to the Lear Working Group, Mr. Finley indicates that staff are diligently working away on mapping. No disrespect to staff, but to then formulate a committee that is going to have a map in front of it that has been developed by some consultant with staff who have basically worked in a, I don't want to use the word back room inappropriately, but basically worked at City Hall without the efforts of that Lear working group causes a bit of suspicion and cynicism, like Mr. Marcus suggested. You probably are not going to get developers coming forward saying, here's the classification of my land. By the same token, I think the appropriate way to formulate any new map is the way you do everything else in this city. We work together as a committee, and we review the data the same as the staff are, so that when a map is produced, everybody knows, just like the previous Lear working group, everybody knows that, yep, we all agree that this is the right map. I can tell you right now that if a map is dropped in front of a bunch of us 6 months or 2 years from now that says, here we are, this is now what we're going to start with, the first fight is going to be over the map. Lastly, just if I can be indulged, Mr. Mark is correct. Staff can bring forward a report identifying whatever they want when they look at reviewing the official plan, but if OPA 150 gets approved, the board will strongly look at OPA 150 and the information in 150 going to the next OP, I would have to think. And so if they had amended Schedule G or 15 or whatever, Annex 15, to just say take out these but leave in agricultural, then I would feel more comfortable that the city was concerned with agricultural. Right now, to me, it's just thrown out with the bathwater.
Right, but there was no review of the urban boundary in 2013.
It doesn't matter. It's an inevitability that's going to happen. So it doesn't matter if it does or did happen in 15. It's still looking forward, saying council's still concerned with this as an issue, in my opinion.
Okay. Councillor Blake.
So, Mr. Mark, OPA 76, the board ruled that the screening out of ag lands should be put into the OP because the criteria that were established to do OPA 76 use those, but they weren't in the OP.
That criterion, Mr. Chair, together with every other criterion
Sure.
that was in Annex 15. Yes.
Sure, which makes lots of sense. So in taking it out of OP 150, if it gets approved, and then 5, 10, whatever years from now, we do another OP to bring lands in, and it's not there, but we use it as a screening method, would the OMB then not rule again that it should be in the OP if we're using it as a screening method? Aren't we just replicating the exact same situation is basically what I'm asking.
Mr. Chair, there is no doubt that the provincial policy statement provides protection to prime agricultural area. The question is, moving forward 7 years, let's say we're looking at an analysis that's completed in 2022, could there be some compelling rationale as to why the city might wish to look at agricultural area? As I sit here today, I can't tell you that there would be, because I don't know what that compelling rationale might be. But might the city want at least to be able to consider it? The view was, as endorsed by council in 2013, yes. And it just leaving that possibility open when the need for the analysis comes forward. Not today, but sometime in the future.
I see your point, Mr. Mark. I don't recall that taking that out was a large point of discussion around the council table when the OP was approved. And I would bet if you were to poll the 24 elected officials, very few, if any of them, would realize that had actually, in fact, been removed from the OP. I think everyone has operated on the basis that all other lands must be considered first, and using ag lands is the absolute last resort. And I will leave it at that.
And that is city policy, and that has been provincial policy. So, is there a benefit in putting it back in now?
Yes, Mr. Chair, that is certainly provincial policy. With Annex 15 in the plan, if you move it as a possibility at all, and with it out of the official plan, it is at least an option that could and appropriate to be.
Sorry, can you say it again? It's not in the official plan.
All right. Let me throw this. With Annex 15 in there, one has removed entirely the possibility of looking at agricultural land.
Yes.
It is off the table. If you take out Annex 15, there are a series of tests that you must go through but you at least have the option of going through those tests. With Annex 15, you don't even go through those tests.
Yeah, to be honest, I'm fine with that. But all right.
So the door's open.
Well, so essentially, what we did was we made it possible for situations like the Barnesdale lands. Whereas, if Annex 15 was in there, the Barnesdale lands maybe couldn't happen, even though they're not really agricultural land. That's what I mean. So it's, but if it was designated agricultural land, and Annex 15 was still a part of the OP, wouldn't that make it more difficult for them to have rezoned it? They wouldn't be considered at all. Yeah. Well, no.
Correct. Correct.
So, all right. We should likely have further conversation on that. I don't know if it's. I'm not going to do it on the fly right now, but yeah. All right. Do we have any further questions for Mr. Phillips? So, Councillor Drews?
Yeah, thanks. I still want to go back to the Lear. I'm really not really satisfied with all the answers, so I really like to take this item offline and review.
Well, it is off. I mean, to be honest, it is offline. It's
Well,
this is
the thing is,
information
the thing
update.
is, we need to
Actually
know.
more than anything.
I need to know personally where we're at the Lear, and I'd like to see from a staff perspective how we're going to move forward in updating the Lear, because I'm not satisfied.
Fair enough. So, Bruce, how soon can we meet get the working group back together and meet to discuss where we're at?
The working group?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we'll contact all the members.
Sorry, guys. I can't hear Bruce because he was talking.
Contact all the members and find out if they're available to and willing to participate.
Right, so can I give you a direction in the next 3 months to sit down with the working group and get it back together, just to
Try and get them together
have that
for a
kickoff meeting to
Yeah.
get back to?
Yeah.
All right. So within 3 months.
And it wasn't staff's intention to bring forward an updated Lear model and Lear scores without using the working group.
Right.
So,
Right. And I understand the challenge. If you have the two maps, how'd you get to both maps? I mean, that's the question, right? If you put the two maps in front of them, the ones that you have, the 97 and the 2009, if you put them in front, the question is going to be to you, how'd you get to those two? And the fact is, you don't have an answer.
we don't have the answer.
Yeah. So, what you said. All right. Thank you, Mr. Phillips. So, obviously, we have more to talk about, but I know I'm a member of the working group. Councillor Blais has been a member in the past as well. So we'll reconvene that working group and in the next 3 months, and we'll get an update and we'll move forward on it from there. Any other questions on the matter? No? If you're wondering why I might have laughed while Mr. Mark was speaking, the desk fell apart. So, and it fell apart in my lap. So this is why you may have seen me laughing. It wasn't anything Mark was saying. So on the report, is the report received? All right. Thank you. So that's it for the regular agenda item. So in camera, we have, pardon me? I have a couple other things. Oh, my goodness. My apologies. All caught up in this other thing. Number 8, the protocol for wildlife protection during construction. We do have one speaker, Donna DeBray, with she's the president of Ottawa Carleton Wildlife Center. So I know you also spoke at Planning Committee, saw the presentation at Planning Committee, so I won't bore you again with the presentation. But happy to provide you an opportunity to speak.
The consistent problem here. Is it on?
Sorry, Councillor Drews,
Oh, yeah.
you can't leave the room. I only have 2 people up here. Quorum's 3. You should have been faster than Blake.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to comment. I think with respect to the construction protocol, we support the recommendations, but we're very concerned that it has been watered down with the removal of the requirement for developers to have to submit a wildlife mitigation plan and also a construction site management plan. Both, we think, are reasonable requirements to reduce harm to wildlife. Replacing these requirements with only best practices guidelines will change nothing in what is a very deadly environment for wildlife, unless these best practices are actually implemented. Now that the implementation rests squarely on staff, or on planning staff, and the city, we ask that you as councillors make the wildlife construction protocol a priority and give staff the resources needed to do the job. Some of you will recall on this committee, I know Councillor Chantieri is not here, but some of you will recall when a wildlife strategy, which is kind of the umbrella, if you like, was approved by ARAC back in 2013. The wildlife construction protocol was identified as a long overdue priority at that time, having first been approved by regional government back 15 years ago, so it's not a new initiative. You recall that the wildlife strategy you approved was centered on wildlife-sensitive planning. Well, we feel that the wildlife construction protocol is going to be the first real test of the city's commitment to wildlife-sensitive planning. With respect to the process, I do want to make a comment. You'll also recall, for those people that were on ARAC at the time when you approved the wildlife strategy, that a lengthy report was in front of you. That report talked and summarized the results of a public consultation. It included written submissions, and as well, those were in support and opposed, along with staff comment. The report in front of you today provides no such information, making it impossible for you as councillors, and just as important for the public, to understand why, if the majority of the submissions, there were 106 of them, written submissions were in support of the protocol, why has it been so substantially watered down? The Home Builders Association opposed the protocol, conducting a survey showing that no other municipality had a protocol as the reason for why Ottawa shouldn't go ahead with one, or at least one that had much in the way of teeth. I'd like to say that best practices are not established by those wanting to be last in line. We have been working with cities like London, Ontario, and Edmonton, Alberta, cities that are not afraid to be first in line when it comes to protecting wildlife and the environment. Edmonton, for example, has recently won international and national awards for incorporating wildlife passage design into its transportation and drainage planning. It has built 27 wildlife passages since implementing the program 9 years ago. Edmonton didn't say, no one else is doing this, so why should they? They saw a need and did the right thing, reducing costly wildlife collisions by 51% in the process, even though they have had clearly 200% or 200,000 increase in population, as well as a lot of road infrastructure to accommodate that population. Edmonton's leadership has gained the support of developers in that community. We were speaking to several of them. And the community were in a survey that conducted within the community, 97% of the community were in strong support of this initiative. I'd like to summarize by saying that Ottawa has an opportunity to be first with respect to an effective wildlife construction protocol. And we urge you as councillors to ensure that this is not another missed opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. I know that Councillor Hughley and Councillor Blais also sit on the planning committee to have the opportunity to review this and to get your presentation last week as well. I know in working with on this file, meeting with staff, that it did change. It has changed over time as to how it was first conceived several months ago to now. But in terms of the tools, like I wouldn't necessarily agree that staff don't have the tools. I think they have the ability to look at each and every application on its own merits and determine, what type of protocol to apply at that time, as opposed to one overarching protocol. Any single application that comes in gets treated the same way. That certainly wouldn't be. I don't think that's fair, because not every application is the same. Not every property is the same. I mean, in the past, I know that in my ward, we created, we're in the process of creating 5 acres of bubbling habitat for some development in Orleans. So it's not like developers aren't going through this process. They are finding ways to work with staff and to protect wildlife through construction. And I think this will just help guide that. Maybe it's not as strong as some people would like, but it's a rare occasion where we develop something that everyone supports. So I think you're trying to find a common middle ground where people think that we're in the right direction. And personally, I think this achieves that. But I do appreciate you taking the time to come here today to speak.
Thank you.
Do you have any questions for staff on the matter? No. So on the item that Agricultural Affairs and Rural Affairs Committee recommend council approve the protocol for wildlife protection during construction attached as document 1. Carried? Thanks. So I just have a couple of items that have to be dealt with before we go to the open mic session. So let's see, notice of motion, so that goes after. It's just, so this is, I'll just save some time. This is moved by Councillor DeRuse, but essentially it's at the council for the past couple months, we keep on bringing these FIT applications forward. We walk them on and get them approved. So what we're doing here is we're just bringing them through Agricultural Rural Affairs Committee first. So essentially it's this, this motion is regarding ground mount solar FIT projects at 2730 Dunrobin Road, 1705 Old Prescott Road, 2342 John Quinn Road, 2352 John Quinn Road, and 7151 Bleaks Road. It's just essentially each motion is the same as the one before it. It's a process through the FIT rules where applications whose projects receive the formal support of local municipalities will be awarded priority points, which may result in the applicant being offered a FIT contract prior to other persons applying for FIT contracts. So like I said, we had brought these forward to council on an individual basis. So we're just bringing them forward here, and then they will go to council next week for approval. So,
Mr. Chair,
just, yeah.
just as a point of clarification, did I hear you say 1705 Old Prescott Road?
Did you get it wrong?
It was an incorrectly added on one of the earlier motions. It's a different
Okay.
site, actually. The proper address is identified by a property identification number rather than an address. Just I want to make sure that we're not approving something for 1705.
The motion I have in front of me says 1705. So you have one. So I'll just, all right. So first I just have to, that the rules of procedure be waived to consider the following motion to allow for applicant to proceed under the feed-in tariff program for Grand Mount Solar FIT projects. Is that carried? And then to consider the motion, so, yeah, so you have to change that then. And we have the PIN number. Hopefully the PIN number is right, 043190994. But the address, you can address it afterwards. But that is just the appendix. That's appendix A through E. The motion itself is whereas on October 5th, 2015, the independent electricity system operator will open the application window for green energy projects between 10 kilowatts and 500 kilowatts under the provincial feed-in tariff program. Whereas renewable energy projects align with the 2015-2018 term council priorities for sustainable environmental services and economic prosperity. Whereas the city was notified of this requirement after the September 9th, 2015 council meeting. And whereas the independent electricity system operator requires individual motions of support for each project, and the order in which applications are received by the IESO as a consideration in the approval process. Therefore, be it resolved, the Agricultural Rural Affairs Committee recommend council approve the individual motions of support for the ground-mounted solar FIT program project applications listed as appendices A through E. Of course, the ones that I just already mentioned. So again, it's moved by Councillor DeRuse on the item. Carried. Thank you. So we'll move on to, we haven't noticed the motion, but that's we'll do that later. We'll move on to open mic session. Yeah. So we have Klaus Belzner, who's still here, to speak in our open mic session. So Klaus, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Councillor Moffat. I have 2 items to bring forward. They're procedural policy related. The first item deals with the update of the Manatic secondary plan. In that update, draft update, there's an identification of, what's it called? A gateway at Manatic Main and Bankfield. At this present time, the property adjacent to that intersection is for sale. When we look at the transportation master plan, we see a concept of protecting rights of way, either for rail or for transit or for roads. We don't seem to have a protection for elements such as a gateway feature when the property comes up for sale, to have the city protect that particular piece of land for the use of the designation in the draft secondary plan. So I'm going to ask that we look at finding ways to provide provisions for protection of those kinds of elements going forward, as opposed to allowing them to be sold and then not be available for that use. So that's the first item. The second item has to do with development charges and growth. Right now, development charges are collected citywide. but they're applied to growth areas which are predominantly in the urban area. So when it comes to infrastructure projects such as an intersection that has been approved through an EA, an intersection improvement project at the corner of Bankfield and Prince of Wales, there's no funding mechanism available to actually fund that project. There's not sufficient money in the intersection improvement budget to even consider such an improvement. I would like to see an opportunity to have a revenue stream applied to the rural areas which taps into the development funds as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Obviously, I don't think I personally have information on that. The second part, we can try to work with staff. I'll try to get some more information, and then I can actually share it with you on those. I know that from the first one, as a policy, until we actually have a plan as to how we're developing an intersection, let's say, we don't acquire lands until that intersection improvement is approved. So I'm not sure what mechanism the city would have to essentially stockpile land, but it is an interesting argument because it's an interesting discussion, because I know last month at this very meeting we talked about, in the transportation master plan, arrows, general arrows that go through nowhere. What are those arrows mean? What are we doing? Are we protecting that land? Because we really aren't. So it's an interesting concept. But I'm happy to try to take your comments here and work with staff and see if I can get some comments back to you. So thank you for coming. So we have, that's it for the open mic session. Notice of motion. We do have a notice of motion from Councillor El Shantiri. He can't be here today. He's at a police conference on behalf of the City of Ottawa. So this notice will be moved by Councillor DeRuse in his absence, and will be dealt with at the next committee meeting. It does deal also with development charges. I'll just read the bottom really quick. It's just that therefore be it resolved that ARAC recommend Council grant the authority to the City Clerk and Solicitor to enter into agreement with the owner of 3765 Loggers Way to defer development charges associated with a change in use of the existing structure for a period of 2 years from the issuance of any building permit. This is a school in Kinburn. That's the use is being changed, and the property owner is being charged essentially retroactive development charges. And I know Councillor El Shantiri has been working with the property owner to try to resolve the issue. So this works toward that, and we'll have that discussion next month. That's it for notice of motion. Any inquiries? Seeing none. Other business? Seeing none. Adjournment? Carried. Next meeting is Thursday, November 5th at Ben Franklin Place. Thank you.